Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So we're on about, I think we're on about phase 4 of this inside the barn build. The last video you watched, you saw us do the ceiling underneath this room right here. So this is just going to be storage up here on top. So we had to put insulation in the floor here first in order to keep that room underneath warm. So what I'm doing here is I got this first section. This is kind of like 3 sections, right? Because of the blocking I put in there. So I'm just going to kind of do it in 3 sections. So I got the insulation in the first section. It went pretty much as planned. It didn't, no issues there, really. And then we put the block of paper on top. I realize, for you guys that are going to question this, the block of paper is more for a slanted roof or a vertical wall. But the reason I put it down here is because that way anything that's falling up here, like dust or dirt or whatever, anything we end up doing up here, it doesn't end up falling into the insulation. It's kind of like just a protective barrier that I'm putting down. That's the only reason it's there. And if you're familiar with the blocket paper, the claim is that it will let the moist, warm air escape through it, the moisture, so that it doesn't sit in your insulation barrier, and then it'll escape out the top, or on a wall, it would escape out the wall to the back side of the metal siding, and then it's supposed to run down between the little bubbles. It's supposed to run down and come out on the bottom, okay? Now, I don't know how much warm, moist air you have going through this. I really don't know, but that's the science behind the blocket paper. So I'm putting it down. I had extra left over from building the building, so I'm putting it down, and that's what it's there for, okay? So we got, I started here, I got about 6 boards laid down here, nailed in, and those are my, to get my stagger going the way I want it. And now I got the rest of these cut for this end here, and I'm going to just get those nailed down quick, and then we'll move on to the next section here. We'll move some of these boards and get some of that stuff over here, and then we'll move on to the next section and show you some of the insulation, how I'm doing that, rapid paper and whatever. So let's get started. All right, I just got to finish up that last piece. I got to do a few cuts there to go around them railing boards. You could stuff it in there, but it leaves a gap in the corner. So I cut it a little bit, remove a little bit, and then it fits in there a little tighter. So I just got to do that one, and then we'll get to laying the wrap down. All right, let's get this blocket down. The problem with that, cutting that, I went and cut that on the chop saw. It melts, because it's plastic, it kind of melts. It doesn't cut real easy. So then when you're trying to unroll it, that melted edge gets snagged, and then it wants to tear the corners a little bit, which none of that matters for what I'm doing. but that's why I struggled unrolling that. A normal roll would just unroll. We had the same issue on the outside of the building. We wanted to cut a roll because that top piece was way shorter than the other piece. I only needed like 5 feet compared to it, and it's a 10-foot roll. So we tried cutting it, and we had the same issue unrolling it then after we cut it, because it's kind of melted on that one end. But it works. I mean, it's just there to keep stuff from falling through is basically why I'm putting it on there. So that's it for today. I gotta be somewhere. So tomorrow or the next day, tomorrow's supposed to be cold, but the next day maybe we'll get out here and we'll lay the rest of these boards for this section here. So we'll catch you then. I finally got a little bit more breathing room up here to stand on. Yesterday I had the board right here at the edge of my sawhorses, and towards the end of the day there, I slipped off of that and I went into one of the cavities there. And it's a good thing that I put that ceiling on underneath first, or I probably would have ended up on that floor down there below. Because yeah, it caught me completely by surprise, you know. So now I got a little more room to work here. We're gonna go, I don't know, maybe three more boards down there or something. Maybe 4 I can get in there yet. And then I gotta move all that stuff over here, and reorganize everything. So I'll try and get this done here today yet, and then maybe tomorrow we'll start on that section over there and do some more, the rest of the insulation, and get the rest of these boards down. So I thought I would share how I'm cutting this insulation here. So my number for this next section here is 51 inches. So I have my tape measure on there. And it doesn't have to be accurate. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. So I leave it a little long. I actually measured about 49 for that cavity there. So I leave it a little long so I have a little extra just to kind of stuff in there. And that's it. Nice clean cut. Just a little box cutter. Now you can see that this insulation has already grown. When you take it off the roll it's like this here, you know, flat. And now it's just by itself laying here on the bench. It has expanded overnight. And that's what it does in the cavity. It just expands and fluffs up to the 6 inches or whatever it's made for. So let's just talk for a second about the theory behind insulation. So this is what they call blanket insulation, okay? It's fiberglass. There's rock wool, there's fiberglass, there's other types that you can buy. This is fiberglass, okay? So this is made out of little tiny pieces of glass that are spun into this, hair, whatever you want to call it. And what that does is that fills your cavity up with a space, okay? So the idea behind it is not that this material is actually insulating. What this material is doing is holding air, or air molecules, however you want to say it. It's holding air in that cavity. And when you heat your house or your room, as we're doing, the room, so when you heat your house, that warm air goes into this cavity, and this blanket basically holds that warm air in place, okay? And yes, after time, a little bit does escape, and that's the idea what the blocket is for, so that that warm, moist air goes out and leaves the cavity and then runs down the outside of the wall, not getting your insulation wet, okay? That's why you need ventilation in your attics, is so that that air is moving, so that when that moist air comes up through that insulation, that just disappears, you know? If you don't have ventilation in your attic, you're gonna have mold and whatever up there because your insulation can't breathe. So it has to breathe. There is the warm air at some point is gonna escape, whether you want it to or not, okay? So that's the theory behind batting insulation, is it traps that air molecules and it holds it there for a while, and that's what keeps your house warm. And then, you know, like I say, at some point it does escape a little bit at a time. That's where the idea comes in, that you do not want to compress this, because if you compress it, now you've squeezed the air out of it, okay? And there isn't any air molecules in there to collect the warm air. So if you squeeze it and compress it, you're losing the value of the air, of the insulation. What other things insulate? So people relate snow to cold, but snow is actually an insulator. If you have a blanket of snow on top of your roof, that's actually helping with your insulation on your house, you know? In a sense, okay? Don't take that for the way I said it, I guess, but it does. It is an insulation. So if you were ever a kid and you dug a snow fort, once you got inside that snow fort, it was actually a lot warmer inside there than it was outside in the air. And that's the insulation factor. There's air molecules in that snow, and it's a fluffy thing that holds air. And that's what creates the insulation value, is actually the air. The blanket you wear when you're sitting in your chair in your living room does the same thing. It's basically insulation that traps air, so when your body gives off heat, it traps that warm air underneath that blanket and doesn't let it escape like it normally would if you just put a sheet on, you know? So that's the theory behind insulation. Now there's all new products out there now. You got all these styrofoams. The spray foam, which a lot of people are using, is spray foam, but it's very expensive. Is it better? I don't know. I think it seals the gaps in the house more than this style of insulation. I think it seals it better. Whether it has any more insulation value than this here does, I don't know that for certain. Those are some of your new ones. The styrofoams, you know, you can take a 1 or a 2 inch piece of that pink styrofoam. I think those are getting up there to the R9 or something like that, or R10 for a 2 inch piece of styrofoam. That's what they put below my concrete out here in the barn, was they put 2 inches of that pink styrofoam down, and then they poured the concrete on top of it. So that helps with the cold air, the frost coming up from the ground up through the concrete. That insulates that a little bit. That gives me a little bit of a barrier there to keep that concrete from getting so cold. All right, so that, enough said for insulation, what it is. You can look it up. There's all kinds of stuff out there on insulation and how you should do it, and putting the plastic on the inside and the outside. There's a lot of arguments on that. And it all depends where you're at. Cold climate, warm climate, it all makes a difference on what you're trying to insulate, you know. If you're in a warm climate, you're basically trying to insulate from the hot air getting in instead of the hot air getting out like we are up here in Wisconsin. That's a different formula then for putting your insulation in, I believe, with where the plastic goes. So in the cold weather climates, they usually tell you plastic to the inside. That stops any moisture from the warm air in your house from penetrating your walls and getting into the insulation. So then you should have relatively clean, you know, dry air going through your insulation and then escaping. So that's the theory behind it. That's all I can really tell you. I'm not an expert on insulation. I'm just sharing that with you so you know why you insulate. So without the insulation, these rooms would not hold their heat at all. You know, I could run a wood burner in there, and yes, it would get warm, but it wouldn't be efficient at all. It would be just you'd be heating up the space for the time you're in there, and then, you know, it wouldn't hold the temperature very well at all. Much like a piece of glass. I mean, a window in your house, that's why they went with the thermal panes, and now they got triple pane glass. That's an air space between there, and that's what helps hold the heat in, is that air space in between there, you know, captures and holds the warmth in more than the glass does. So, all right, enough of that. We're gonna start putting this stuff in. I gotta get another roll open here. We're gonna start putting this in these last cavities, and then we'll get some more wood down. Guy should have is like a little hook, a thin hook that you could stick down in there and pull the stuff back up. That's what a guy should have. I don't have one made up, but that's, after doing these cavities, that's one thing that I thought in my head that I should have, is a little hook that I can stick in there and kind of just pull the stuff back up if I push it down too far. So you always want to stay covered up when you're working with this stuff. I've been covered up all week here trying to do this, except for my face that's exposed. And I go in and take a shower as soon as I'm done out here. And I still, in my hands, I still can feel the little prickers in there, the little glass fibers that get in my hands just from handling my gloves and my jacket and shaking it off without gloves on. But for the most part, the rest of me is covered, and I'm not having too much of an issue. Some people can't work with this stuff at all, but it doesn't really bother me too much, you know. All right, so let's get those couple, what do I got? I cut 4 of them there. We'll get them in there, and then we'll finish this up. So that's about it for insulation. It's nothing hard to do. It's just a dirty job. Got to cover yourself up. It's all I can really say about it. It's, you know, styrofoams and all that stuff. They're not as abrasive to your body or your skin. But this is your cheapest route probably, is the fiberglass batting. I forget the actual numbers. Let me look it up quick. So for the rock wool, what they call a rock wool or mineral wool, that comes in a brick. More, you can't bend it and fold it, okay? You have to cut it to make it fit, okay? So that is good for, like, when we do the bottom down along the concrete, the bottom, that little cavity I made, where I called the rat boards when I built this barn. That's where the rock wool will go. One layer of rock wool will go in there. So that rock wool is better for moisture, mildew, you know, mold, that type of stuff. So that's why you put the rock wool down there. So just in comparison, a 5.5 inch rock wool, which is a R23 compared to an R19 in the batting, you get five bricks at 47 inches. So that is what, 16 feet? No, 20 that would be 21 feet. 21 feet. Okay, so that's around $45 for a bundle of 5 bricks, okay, at 21 feet. So then if I go to this stuff that I'm using, this stuff is 39 feet for the same price, okay? So you're covering a lot more area with this here. This is only an R19 compared to R23, but for the value, this is much better. Now they also sell, you know, like a does it say a dimension here? Yeah, it's like for a pole barn for the walls. It's 93 inches wide, so it's pretty wide piece. By 55 feet, and when I calculate that out per square foot, buying the 24-inch rolls at 39 feet was cheaper than buying the big piece for doing these walls. So this is the route we're going, just because it's cheaper. It's the same insulation, it's just a bigger sheet, you know, that you're getting. And I'll put these clips up there. They don't have a price on here, but I know what the price is because I priced it at the store. If I can get this same screenshot with the price included, you'll be able to do your own comparisons and you'll see what insulation costs, you know. And then they also have what a lot of places use on the roof is got the plastic on it for the pole barns, and that's way more expensive. So this is the best route for me to go. Seeing we put the block it on the walls and we're putting the plastic up, this is the best, cheapest, most economical way to go that I'm using right now. All right, enough said about that. I'll finish up these couple of bays here, and then we'll get to block it down, and we'll finish this floor, and we'll be done up here. All right, well that's going along pretty good. I'll get the rest of these pieces cut. And then we got, looks like I might have to rip one there. But I can do that some other time. I don't have to do that today to finish this up. I'll get back to you when I get this all finished, nailed down. Okay guys, got her all finished up. I'm going to put a little toe kick on there so that you can't just step right off onto the insulation or anything. It looks good. I mean, for just a storage area, I'm real happy with it. I got one board right here that's sticking up, and it kind of pisses me off that I didn't see that before I nailed it down, but I don't know. Maybe I can take my planer and just smooth it off a little bit later on, but it's looking good. I'd like to send out a special thank you to Rich Compton over in Wasaki that gave me all these logs, that gave me the opportunity basically to come over there and saw down his trees and take them back home and make all of this stuff out of them. I'm completely out of wood now. I have a couple of logs that I'm going to try and use for that ceiling over there in that other room yet. And that's it. There's no more knotty pine. It's all gone. That said, if you like these videos, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.